Tropical Cyclone Luana has made landfall. Another tropical low is developing off Queensland. We've got active cyclone season conditions right across northern Australia, and there's a fair bit to unpack here. I've been examining the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, looking at the satellite imagery, the model runs, and the current observations. This is shaping up to be a busy period for the tropics, and if you are anywhere from the Northern Territory coast across to far north Queensland, you need to understand what S coming your way. Let us start with where we are right now. Tropical Cyclone Luana developed rapidly over the past 24 to 48 hours. That S, one of the concerning aspects of this system. We went from a tropical low to a named cyclone in a relatively short period. The warm sea surface temperatures across the region, combined with low wind shear and favourable upper-level conditions, allowed this system to intensify quickly. Luana made landfall along the Northern Territory coast. The exact intensity at landfall was a Category 2 system on the Australian scale. Wind gusts reached up to 130 kilometres per hour in the most exposed areas. That S significant, but it is not in the same league as Tracy back in '74. Cyclone Tracy had winds up to 217 kilometres per hour and destroyed Darwin. This system won to reach those extremes, but it still deserves respect. Right now, across the top end, conditions are deteriorating rapidly for anyone in the direct path. Darwin itself is on the periphery of the system, copping strong winds and heavy rainfall, but not the worst of it. Further east along the coast, that S, where the most severe conditions are being experienced. Destructive wind gusts, very heavy rainfall, and the potential for storm surge in coastal areas. The coastal communities need to take this seriously. If you are in a cyclone-prone area, you already know the drill. Secure loose items, stock up on essentials, make sure you've got torches, batteries, drinking water. If you're in a caravan or temporary structure, relocate to solid shelter now. Don't wait until conditions deteriorate further. Storm surge is a particular concern with any tropical cyclone. The combination of low pressure, strong winds and high tides can push water levels well above normal. For this system, we're re-looking at potential storm surge of 1 to 2 metres in the most exposed coastal areas. That might not sound like much, but it's enough to cause significant flooding in low-lying coastal zones. If you are in a flood-prone coastal area and authorities tell you to evacuate, do it. Now let S talk about the rainfall. This is often the biggest impact from tropical cyclones, and Luana is no exception. The heaviest rainfall is occurring in a band around the centre of the system and in the outer rain bands. We're re-looking at totals of 150 to 300 millimetres across a broad area. Some locations, particularly where the rain bands stall or where you get orographic enhancement from local terrain, could see totals exceeding 400 millimetres. That's a serious amount of rain in a short period. Flash flooding is a major concern. Rivers and creeks will rise rapidly. Roads will be cut. If it's flooded, forget it. That is the message from the SES, and it's worth repeating because every year people ignore it and get into trouble. The thing about tropical cyclones is they don't just impact the immediate landfall area. The effects spread out over hundreds of kilometres. Heavy rainfall, strong winds, isolated tornadoes in the outer bands. Even areas well away from the centre need to be prepared for severe weather. As Luana moves inland, it will weaken. That's the normal pattern. Cyclones need warm ocean water to maintain their intensity. Once they move over land, they lose that energy source. But weakening doesn't mean harmless. The system will continue to produce heavy rainfall as it tracks inland and eventually breaks down into a rain depression. For inland areas of the Northern Territory and potentially into Western Queensland, you are looking at significant rainfall over the next few days as this system weakens and spreads out. That could be beneficial for some areas that have been dry, but it also brings the risk of localised flooding. Now, while Luana is making headlines, there is another development we need to discuss. A tropical low is forecast to develop off the Queensland coast. This is a separate system, and it's worth understanding what we're re-looking at here. The monsoon trough is active across northern Australia. This is typical for this time of year. The monsoon trough is a zone of low pressure that extends across the tropics, and it's a breeding ground for tropical cyclones. We see multiple systems developing along the trough during the wet season. The latest guidance from the Bureau of Meteorology indicates a tropical low could form in the Coral Sea over the next few days. The exact timing and location are still uncertain. We're re-talking about a system that hasn't formed yet, so there is inherent uncertainty in the forecast. What we can say is the environmental conditions are favourable for development. Sea surface temperatures in the Coral Sea are well above 26 degrees Celsius. That's the threshold needed for tropical cyclone development. Wind shear is relatively low, upper level divergence is favourable, all the ingredients are there. The models are showing a low pressure system developing somewhere in the Coral Sea, potentially early next week. If this system develops and intensifies, it becomes a concern for the Queensland coast. The exact track is impossible to predict at this stage. We could see it move west towards the coast. We could see it track south parallel to the coast. We could see it move out to sea and not impact land at all. This is where you need to understand the limitations of forecasting. 5 days out, we can identify that conditions are favourable for development. We can say a system is likely to form. But pinpointing exactly where it will track and how strong it will become, that requires more time and more data. For those along the Queensland coast from Cairns south to the Sunshine Coast, this is something to monitor. Not something to panic about, but something to keep an eye on. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website regularly. They'll issue tropical cyclone advisories if and when the system develops. I've been looking at the model runs and there is considerable spread in the solutions. The Access model, the GFS, the European model, they all showing slightly different scenarios. That S normal at this lead time. As we get closer and if the system develops, the models will converge on a more consistent solution. One scenario has the low developing and moving southwest towards the North Queensland coast. If that happens, we're re-looking at potential impacts for areas from Cairns down to Townsville and possibly further south. Heavy rainfall, strong winds, the usual cyclone impacts. Another scenario has the system developing further south and impacting the central Queensland coast. That would bring concerns for areas like Mackay, the Whitsundays, and potentially down towards Rockhampton. A third scenario has the system staying offshore and tracking south parallel to the coast before eventually moving out into the Tasman Sea. This would still bring impacts to coastal areas, heavy rainfall and rough seas, but the worst conditions would stay offshore. Which scenario plays out depends on how the system develops and what steering currents are in place at the time. The subtropical ridge to the south, the monsoon flow from the north, upper level troughs, all these factors influence the track. What I can tell you is this. If you are in Queensland, particularly coastal Queensland, you should be prepared. Cyclone season runs from November through April. We right in the middle of it. Having a cyclone plan isn't fear-mongering, it is common sense. Know your evacuation route. Have an emergency kit prepared. Torches, batteries, first aid supplies, medications, important documents in waterproof bags, enough food and water for 3 days. Have a battery-powered radio so you can get updates if the power goes out. Check on your neighbours, particularly elderly people or anyone who might need assistance. Make sure they're aware of what is happening and have a plan. If you've got livestock, make sure they and secure paddocks with access to high ground if flooding is a risk. Horses can panic in severe weather, so plan accordingly. For those in far north Queensland who don't to deal with cold weather often, tropical cyclones are part of life. Many of you have been through this before. Cyclone Larry in 2006. Cyclone Yasi in 2011. You know what to expect. For newer residents or people who haven't experienced a cyclone, listen to the old hands, they've been through it. The other thing worth mentioning is the broader pattern we're seeing. This is an active monsoon period. We've had Luana develop and make landfall. We're potentially looking at another system off Queensland. This is what an active wet season looks like in northern Australia. The Madden-Julian oscillation is in a phase that supports enhanced convection across the region. The sea surface temperatures are warm. We're in a neutral El Niño southern oscillation phase, which means we're not getting the suppression of tropical cyclone activity that often occurs during El Niño. All of this adds up to conditions that support tropical cyclone development. We could see more systems over the coming weeks. That doesn't mean we'll definitely get more cyclones, but the risk is elevated. For those keeping score, we're tracking above average for tropical cyclone activity this season so far. The long-term average for the Australian region is about 11 tropical cyclones per season. We're on track to meet or exceed that. Now let's talk about the rainfall benefits because it is not all negative. Northern Australia relies on wet season rainfall. The monsoon rains fill the rivers, recharge groundwater, support agriculture and provide water for communities and ecosystems. Many areas across the top end and North Queensland have been doing well with wet season rainfall so far. The tropical lows and cyclones, while they bring severe weather risks, also deliver significant rainfall. After years of drought in some regions, that rainfall is desperately needed. The challenge is managing the risk while benefiting from the rain. Too much rain too quickly causes flooding. But drought is equally damaging. It's a balance. For the current situation with Luana, areas in the path of the system will see substantial rainfall. Some of that will run off and cause flooding, but some will soak into the ground, benefit vegetation, and help with water supplies. It's worth acknowledging both aspects. Looking at the forecast models for the potential Queensland system, if it develops and brings heavy rainfall to coastal areas, there will be flooding concerns. But areas that have been dry, particularly inland regions, could benefit from the rainfall associated with the system as it weakens and moves inland. Let me give you some specific regional outlooks based on the current forecast. Northern Territory Luana is impacting the coast now. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, the system weakens as it moves inland. Widespread heavy rainfall continues across the top end and into the interior. Flooding is likely in catchments that receive the heaviest falls. Roads will be cut. Communities could be isolated. This is standard for significant wet season systems. Darwin itself is seeing strong winds and heavy rain, but not the worst of the system. Winds should ease over the next 12 to 24 hours as Luana moves inland. Rainfall totals for Darwin are looking at 100 to 150 millimetres, which is significant but not exceptional for the wet season, Western Queensland. As Luana-S remnants move inland, Western Queensland could see beneficial rainfall. Areas that have been dry might see totals of 50 to 100 millimetres over the next few days. That's good news for pastoralists and for water supplies, North Queensland and coastal areas. This is where the attention turns to the potential developing system in the Coral Sea. Right now, conditions across far North Queensland are typical for this time of year, hot and humid. Afternoon storms, overnight lows in the mid-20s, daytime maximums around 32 to 35 degrees. If the Coral Sea low develops and moves towards the coast, that changes dramatically. We'd be looking at a transition from typical wet season conditions to cyclone conditions, heavy rainfall, strong winds, potential storm surge for coastal areas. The timing, if the system develops, would be early to mid next week. Monday through Wednesday is the window we are watching. But again, the system hasn't formed yet. We are forecasting the potential for development, not the certainty. Central Queensland, similar situation. Monitor the forecasts. If the low develops further south, areas like Mackay, Proserpine and the Whitsundays come into focus. The Whitsundays are particularly vulnerable to cyclone impacts due to the island communities and marine infrastructure. Southeast Queensland. Uri well removed from the current activity. Brisbane, the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast. Uri looking at typical summer weather over the next few days. Warm and humid. Afternoon storms possible, particularly inland and over the ranges. Nothing severe expected in the short term. The potential Coral Sea system is too far out and too uncertain to say whether it affects Southeast Queensland. Most scenarios keep the impacts well to the north. But it's worth monitoring because if the system develops and takes a particular track, it could bring heavy rainfall to the southeast later next week. New South Wales and areas further south. URE completely removed from the tropical activity. Different weather patterns are influencing your conditions. A trough and cold front system is bringing showers and cooler conditions to southern areas over the weekend and into early next week. Let me address some of the practicalities for those in potentially affected areas. If you are in the direct path of Luana right now, you are already dealing with the impacts. Stay indoors. Don't go outside during the eye of the cyclone if it passes over. That is when people get injured because they think it's over, go outside to check damage and then get caught when the second half of the system hits. After the system passes, be careful. Fallen power lines, damaged trees, structural damage to buildings, flooding, these are all hazards. Don't drive through flood water. Don't touch fallen power lines. Report damage to authorities. For the potential Queensland system, preparation now is sensible. You don't need to panic buy, but making sure you've got basics covered is smart. Check your emergency kit. Make sure you know the cyclone categories and what they mean. A Category 1 cyclone is very different from a Category 5. The Australian cyclone scale goes from Category 1 with wind gusts of 90 to 125 kilometres per hour up to Category 5 with gusts exceeding 280 kilometres per hour. The impacts scale dramatically with each category. A Category 1 brings minor damage. A Category 5 brings widespread destruction. Most cyclones that impact the Queensland coast are Category 1 or 2 systems. They're serious, they cause damage, they bring flooding, but they're manageable if you re-prepared. The Category 3, 4 and 5 systems are the ones that cause catastrophic damage, but they less common. The key is not underestimating any cyclone. Even a Category 1 can be deadly if you not prepared. Storm surge, flooding, falling trees, flying debris, these are risks with any tropical cyclone. For those watching from southern states, this might seem like a distant problem, but it's worth understanding that tropical cyclones can affect the entire country. The rainfall from decaying tropical systems often reaches well into southern areas. We've seen multiple cases where tropical lows have brought flooding to New South Wales, Victoria, even South Australia. The moisture from tropical systems can enhance rainfall in other parts of the country when it interacts with frontal systems or troughs. So while the direct cyclone impacts stay in the north, the broader effects can spread much further south. Looking at the medium range forecast beyond the next week, the pattern suggests continued active conditions across the tropics. The monsoon trough remains in place, sea surface temperatures stay warm, we're likely to see further tropical low development through late January and into February. This is peak cyclone season. Historically, February and March are the most active months for tropical cyclone activity in the Australian region. We've had a busy start to the season, and there is no reason to expect that to change. For those in cyclone-prone areas, stay vigilant. Keep monitoring the Bureau of Meteorology. They do an excellent job with tropical cyclone forecasting and warnings. The technology and modelling have improved significantly over the past few decades. We get much better lead time now than we used to. That said, tropical cyclones are still challenging to forecast. Small changes in steering currents can cause big changes in track. Intensity forecasting remains difficult. A system can rapidly intensify or weaken depending on conditions. That's why it's important to stay updated with the latest forecasts rather than relying on older information. Final thoughts on this situation. Tropical Cyclone Luana is a significant system impacting the Northern Territory coast now. It will weaken as it moves inland, but heavy rainfall and flooding remain concerns over the next few days. The potential development of a tropical low off Queensland is something to monitor closely. The system hasn't formed yet, so there's uncertainty about track and intensity. But the conditions are favourable for development, and if it does form, it could impact coastal Queensland early to mid next week. This is cyclone season. This is what we expect this time of year in Northern Australia. Be prepared, stay informed, but don't panic. You've dealt with this before if you live in the tropics. For those newer to the region, listen to advice from emergency services and follow the guidance from the Bureau of Meteorology. Check on your mates, look after your family, secure your property. These are the practical steps that make a difference. I'll continue monitoring the situation and will provide updates as new information becomes available. The Bureau of Meteorology updates their forecast multiple times per day during active weather situations. That's your primary source for official warnings and advice.